For most children, the thought of school being cancelled would be a dream come true. However, the reality has proven to be a nightmare for students up and down the country. The education of our young people over the past year has been a turbulent rollercoaster of school closures and online lessons, but from today, Monday the 8th of March, all students in England must return to their classrooms as the first easing of lockdown measures is introduced, which signals relief for all parents who have been stuck at home with bickering siblings. Ethan and Ashley, who are 13 and 11, told me their thoughts and experiences of the past few months.
No, you didn't. You said it was loading.
What things did you enjoy about learning from home?
I didn't have to walk home, and usually it takes like an hour for me to get there because I always walk the long way. Like, I could just literally log off the computer and I'm done.
And did you find that you struggled using the technology?
For the first lockdown, 1 week in, my computer literally stopped working, so I couldn't do 3 months' work.
So Ashley, tell me, what was the worst part about online learning for you?
Not being in the class with your friends, and like if you needed help, asking for like help.
What about you, Ethan?
It was very easy to get distracted because I was literally in the living room for 6 hours a day. And I had to really try to focus on there, although if I just wanted to, I could go on my phone. I didn't, but it was always there, so it was kind of hard.
Do you think that online learning is the way forward?
Definitely not.
No, why?
It's a lot easier to answer questions when you're actually there, because you can like show the reason, and it's a lot easier to say it in words than it is to type it. I'm lucky enough to be a fast typer, but I know a lot of people there took ages to type, so they'd be on the next thing without even knowing that they had any concerns or anything about it.
Do you think all the negativity surrounding online learning is justified?
I can see where it comes from. It is very boring, but it's not that bad if you like get into a schedule when you wake up and everything, and you know, like, second you're done, you can go do whatever you want.
But not everyone has had a difficult time with lockdown learning. The lad's mother gave me some tips on turning the situation into a positive experience.
I think the main point is to work to a routine. It was nice to sort of have lunch with them and able to kind of discuss what they've been learning and see for myself how they learn at school.
So it's opened up a new way of communicating with them?
Yeah, I guess so, because you're understanding it a lot better than you would have before.
So were you at work during the third lockdown, or were you at home with the kids?
I was working, but I was working from home. That probably did have a negative effect because the Wi-Fi was quite strained, and also we were a laptop down because the children have got one between them. So we were lucky that the school were able to lend us a laptop.
Were you concerned about the effect that the pandemic was having on your children?
Not really. I mean, yes, the social side of it, they couldn't see their friends. I mean, quite often they would go around their friends for tea in, you know, the normal circumstances. But they get on together okay, and it was just nice having our little family unit. Selfishly, I enjoyed it because they were with me all the time. And you've got to grasp it while you can, haven't you? Because they just grow up so quickly.
Some experts also believe that online learning has offered scope for personal development, and that a lot of lockdown pessimism is ingrained into society. Dr. Abigail Wright, an educational psychologist, shares her thoughts.
I think it's really important to sort of remember that everyone is going to be having a very individual experience. So it's quite hard to generalise sort of the main problems. Although fundamentally, and one of the first things that come to mind is obviously reduced physical contact and the impact that has on your learning. So that's a huge change that we've never on this scale experienced as well. And I think, you know, there's a lot of problems with accessing the right technology to enable the learning that's carried out with your peers as well.
Do you think our approach to the pandemic has affected how we react to the problems it throws us?
I think for me, my concern is more sort of societal and more about how we're viewing well-being and mental health, because if we take the approach of looking what's happening in an individual's context and supporting that versus this is a pandemic and it's going to impact negatively on our mental health, it's going to have different consequences long term. So the latter is more likely obviously to find ways to kind of equip ourselves to transition out of this and maybe even develop sort of coping skills for the future, whereas the other is going to set us up sort of more negatively to feel maybe that we can't help what has happened to us, and in a sense it has been uncontrollable, but we have no impact in how we deal with things going forward, if that makes sense.
Have you come across any issues affecting education workers, such as teachers?
Yes, of course, this has been a really challenging situation. Like I said, for many people, there's been massive learning curve and curveball in a sense that's been thrown in our expectations, isn't it? So ultimately, there's been things that have come from that, such as obviously those difficulties navigating these new ways of working, whether it be new technology, whether it be problem solving, how to have these emotional connections when we can't have the physical ones. And ultimately, I think what I am hearing a lot of is that everyone's workload has really increased. There's the boundaries between work and home life, when especially you're working with technology, become a lot more blurred. And also because we have been in sort of a crisis, I think you sort of can throw yourself into doing that additional work to help support through these difficult times. So, there have been, I've heard of not just sort of education workers, but parents, carers as well, and families experiencing what we call sort of typically burnout sort of challenges as well. Yeah, those kind of issues, I would say.
So we constantly hear negativity surrounding the subject, but do you think that the situation has resulted in any positive aspects for children at all?
There's been massive challenges, and I think everyone might have experienced some sort of challenge, but there definitely has been some positives, and this has come out of a lot of the research as well. And things like having more control over your learning can have a positive impact. Having a chance to sort of delve into your strengths and interests and things that you might not have had chance or time to do. Some people have had more time with their family and to build those connections, etc. So I think there definitely is some positives, and what is really important to be mindful of as well is that I think we can experience lots of negatives and lots of positives at the same time, and I don't think that's talked about enough.
So what actions do you think authorities should take to help mitigate these issues that you mentioned and provide better support for children?
If I was to kind of think of one thing, it would be about placing well-being at the centre of everything. So more than ever, we know now, don't we, when these difficult times are brought on, well-being should be at the forefront of everything we do. So we couldn't simply just start thinking about, right, let's get back into the classroom and start striving towards particular objectives or, test scores or anything. It's got to be that focus on well-being as a precursor to any sort of academic learning or development. And so I think that, we need to focus on those things that we know work well for supporting children's and young people's well-being. So things like making sure that the focus is on relationships and connection, for example, with education staff and young people. Making time for play is absolutely fundamental for all ages, even adults I'm talking here. And then the other things that I think would be really important is focusing on the individual person and celebrating what is unique about them in terms of their strengths and interests, but also about the things that are important to them for supporting them, so that everyone can feel empowered of their own sort of unique learning journey as well.